There are times when the inlet and outlet on your new mechanical pump just doesn't line up the way you need it to. So, what can you do about it? You just clock the housing. There are some best practices and things that you should and shouldn't do when you're doing this, and some things that you'll do if you screw it up, and you'll know instantly that you got it wrong. So, let's move over to the workbench. I'll show you exactly what those things are, how to do it, some things to avoid, and some things to make this a little bit easier. Now we're just going to look at the Edelbrock pump because it's what I have the most of. Small block Chevy, big block Chevy, and I believe that's a Ford. They all use the same type of hardware and they all really work the exact same way. And they all disassemble and assemble the same way. There's some little things that you have to do, especially on the assembly side, that if you don't get it right, again, you'll know instantly if you got it wrong. First things first, don't ever use an electric or powered gun when you're doing this. The reason being is when you are loosening and even tightening back up, if you use the electric gun when you are going in and out with the hardware, it sometimes can catch on the diaphragm and wrap up on there. If it does, then you're just going to create other issues, whether you tear the diaphragm or going back together, same thing. It catches it, rotates it around there, and just makes it that much harder, especially going back together. It's not that easy. If you've got a longer arm, like the one on the Ford here, makes it much easier because the more leverage you have makes it easier, and I'll show you that here in just a second. But we're going to just concentrate on the Chevrolet one, so we'll just use a small block Chevy one. If you look at the factory pump, this is the way they're clocked. Now, it's all different. This happens to be the one off the GMC truck. It is a little bit different. Edelbrock and I believe Holley both clock theirs to the front. This whole assembly moves together. They don't move independently. That moves as an assembly. Obviously, on the factory pump, you can't clock this. So let's move everything out of here, but just a small block Chevy, we'll talk about it. Couple of things on the hardware here. T25 bit, you can use a slotted screwdriver with it, but the bit will allow you to get down in there a little bit further and gauge it. So when you are disassembling, this is a little bit easier. All you're just going to do is get a hold of the hardware and just start screwing it out. Now this is where it becomes very tempting to attach it to something that is electric. To allow you to zip that out of there, that's when you will cause those problems. So when you are coming out, it's a little bit easier. Certainly when you are going back together, it's even more tempting to zip it out of here. So let's do this. Now that I've got it started, you can see that. I'm going to take all these all the way out of there, and we'll get it loose so the housing is loose enough that we can move it around. I'll show you something here next. So when we take this apart, very simple on the inside. These are just the check valves for it. Inlet, outlet, as we mentioned earlier, I think these are clocked together. You can't separate these. These are fixed. So what we need to do is when we're in that position, now we just need to find one that's a little bit over on this side so we can get it a little bit away from the frame rail on the GMC. Now, this isn't the hard part. The hard part about this is when you install this and you go back together, this pump, the diaphragm needs to be fully compressed into there, meaning you have to actuate the pump rod all the way down or the pump lever all the way down. Reason being is because that diaphragm needs to be at its fully compressed orientation, so when you put the bottom back onto here, the diaphragm is already in place where it needs to move within the stroke of it, if that makes sense. If you just bolt this on, which I believe is the problem with the big block pump, we'll take that apart. Maybe we'll do that on camera, maybe not. When you take that and put that together just without compressing that, it will not pump. There will be no pressure. It's not actuating. So to do this, it's a little complicated. So here what I'm going to do off camera is I'm I'm going to go ahead and get this lined up where we want to, get the hardware run down a little bit. Our pump is assembled. Like I said, we're not tightening all these down. We just want to make sure that everything is started, but leave a little bit of space, because what you need to do is you need to make sure the diaphragm moves as you actuate the rod. Now, the reason why I'm zoomed all the way out here is hopefully that shows up. What I like to do is just put a bunch of extensions together. This happens to be, I believe, a 5/8 socket. What will happen is, as we're connected, I'm going to put that 5/8 socket over it and then use the length of those as a lever so we can actuate this arm all the way down. Now, a popular thing I've seen is people say that they take the spring out because these are just on by a little nub that sticks out on both spots. And you can do that if you want to. I tend not to like to do that for several reasons. One, yes, overcoming that spring pressure is kind of a pain, but the spring pressure you're really trying to overcome is the one that's inside the pump. So that little bit more extra doesn't matter. If you've got a long enough lever, you can do that no problem. So now that we talked about that, I'm going to put it in the vise, get my tools ready, because once we actuate that arm down, I don't want to be standing there holding it for 5-10 minutes. I need to quickly get these zipped down as quick as possible so the diaphragm sticks in place. Now, you can't just do, one or two or opposite sides. All 6 of these screws need to be screwed down pretty tightly, because when you release this lever, you don't want it to, come loose. You don't want the diaphragm to slip out of there. You want to be, when it's released, you want to be in its state where it will pump fluid. So hopefully that makes sense. You'll be able to see it when we put it all together, because we'll actuate that and we'll be able to hear the air rushing through it. So, all right, let me get it set up in the vise and we'll get started. Pump is secured in the vise and I'm actuating the lever, and you can see the diaphragm moving around. If you do this to test to make sure that the diaphragm is moving and you don't see it, you need to release a little bit of tension on those screws. You got it too tight. So this is perfect. It's ready to go. Now all I just need to do is just clamp it down and get tightening. Best thing you can do here is just to make sure that the pump is secure enough that when you actuate that lever with that big, long, lever that you put on there, that it's going to hold in place. Now, this one's moving around just a little bit, but it's still okay. We're still able to tighten these down. So actuate the lever, and then you got to get these down as quick as possible. Once they're completely down, make sure they're snug, and then when you release the lever, you'll be able to see that the diaphragm doesn't, move around like we just showed you just a second ago. It stays in place. That's what you're looking for. So this one, now, once all these are all torqued down, then they're you're in good shape. So let's get this out of the vise. We'll go back to the bench. I just want to show you a quick thing. We'll test the pump just to make sure it works, and we'll go from there. That's all there is to it. Our pump now is clocked over where we want it to be. One last little thing is just kind of take a look around the edges here. Just make sure the diaphragm's all poking out of there. You're not, didn't have one that twisted up on you. Because like I said, you don't get a chance to go really slow with this. The long lever like that makes it a lot easier. I wasn't under a lot of stress, but you got to get those tightened down as quick as possible. And the last thing you can do is just actuate this arm. If you can hear the air rushing through there, you're good to go. That pump is ready to go onto the engine. So again, it's not complicated, but you do need a few things. The tool that I use. Now you can use more extensions if you want to make it a lot easier. The longer the lever is, the easier that process is. Really just making sure that it's secure. You're loose when you go on there, and then as you're ready to tighten down, just verify that diaphragm's moving around very easily, and you should be good to go. So if you got any questions on this one, don't hesitate to leave them down below. It's not complicated. The instructions make it sound a little bit harder There's some funky videos online showing people really struggling with this and drilling different holes and using a bunch of funky hardware. Just use what you were given and it's fine. Just have to be a little cautious, like I said, with the diaphragm. So hopefully that helps you out and get your pump clocked where you need to be. It's a great little feature of these types of pumps, and for sure they're worth their weight in gold, especially when you're trying to get away from the chassis like we did on the GMC truck. So this one's going on there, and we're ready to roll. We'll catch you guys on the next one. We'll see you.